Okay, this video we're going to talk about condensers and evaporator cores. Let me mention that both the air conditioning condenser and the evaporator core, they're actually considered heat exchangers. When we talk about the principles of air conditioning and how it changes states, just like a cooling system, it absorbs the heat, releases the heat. Naturally, the refrigerant changes states inside each of these components. Changes states a little bit differently, and I'll mention as we talk about them. But both components are actually considered heat exchangers. Talk about air conditioning condenser for just a second. This is actually a small condenser that I removed from a vehicle. The air conditioning condenser typically lives in the front of the vehicle in the grill area. Some manufacturers have the condenser off to the side. The biggest thing with an air conditioning condenser we need to keep in mind is we've got to make sure we have adequate airflow moving across the condenser, hence why it's in front of the vehicle. If the condenser is moved off to the side of the vehicle, and we will see a lot of our front wheel drive cars and even a lot of our rear wheel drive cars are now using electric cooling fans to draw the air across the condenser. For years, typically our rear wheel drive cars used a mechanical fan clutch. Not the case any longer. We're seeing a lot of rear wheel drive cars use electric fans as well. Front wheel drive cars have been using electric fans to draw air across the condenser and the radiator for many years. The refrigerant, as it enters the top of the condenser, it enters the condenser from the compressor, enters the condenser as a high pressure gas. As the airflow moves across the condenser, it forces the heat that has been absorbed in the gas to be released into the ambient air. Our theory of heat movement, heat moves to cold. Even though it may be a high ambient temperature outside, we've now, through the function of the compressor, raised our pressure and our temperature where the temperature is greater than the ambient heat, so naturally the heat that's been absorbed in the gas or the vapor in the condenser will be released to the atmosphere. So as the gas in the upper portion of the condenser is exchanged to the ambient temperature, it now changes states. The lower portion of the condenser now is a high pressure liquid. So exiting the condenser, moving toward the expansion device, is a high pressure liquid. Our evaporator core. The evaporator core lives inside the HVAC case inside the car. Older vehicles, the evaporator core, you could actually access it under the hood of the vehicle. The evaporator core, just like the condenser, again is a heat exchanger. Significant difference. The evaporator core, as the refrigerant moves through the expansion device slows the refrigerant down, slows the refrigerant from a high pressure liquid to a low pressure liquid moving into the lower portion of the evaporator core. As the refrigerant moves into the lower section of the evaporator core, the heat is drawn from the passenger compartment via the blower motor across the evaporator core. As the heat moves across the low pressure liquid in the bottom of the evaporator core, it forces the liquid to boil, change states to a gas. It absorbs the heat from the passenger compartment and it exits the evaporator core as a low pressure gas. Low pressure gas, low pressure temperature. And you can see I've got a couple of different examples of evaporator cores. These evaporator cores are actually evaporator cores that I removed from vehicles. I'll give you a nice example of what an evaporator core inside a car can look like. Debris that can accumulate inside the evaporator core. Okay? Thank you.